Welcome to Not Starving Artist, the podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Benson, money coach and equity actor. I am your financial cheerleader, here to help you build your financial confidence and have power over your money. The best part, no budgeting or bi-weekly paychecks required. I went from being a broke BFA grad having weekly panic attacks about money to a financially confident, wealth-building actor and business owner. Money gets to feel fun, simple, and sexy, and I am going to show you how. Hold up, have you registered for my new free training yet? It's called Get 3 Months Ahead on Bills with Fluctuating Income so you can do your art stress-free. The anti-budget money strategy for creatives, and it's happening on June 1st. I am going to walk you through why budgeting ruined my mental health and my artistic work as a creative. I'm going to teach you the 4-step process in the anti-budget money strategy. And I'm going to talk about how to get 3 months ahead on bills with fluctuating income and why this is the most important first step. And right after the training on June 1st, doors are going to open to my brand new group program, Cashed Up Creatives, which is the financial education your BFA never gave you. And it's helping creatives hit their money goals without budgeting or bi-weekly paychecks. Now, you want to be registered for the training because only people registered for the training will get access to a free bonus when you join Cashed Up Creatives in the first 48 hours. You're going to get a free 30-minute one-on-one money strategy call with me to map out your personalized money flow method that's going to help you get 3 months ahead on bills no matter what your financial situation is. So make sure you're registered. Link is in the show notes and I will see you there. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited to be launching a brand new series on the podcast this week called Lessons from a Cashed Up Creative. Hello, it's me, a real life cashed up creative, and I'm going to be sharing the major lessons that I have learned in my journey to being cashed up as a creative. Now, what does cashed up actually mean? It means you're rolling in money. It means you have money to spend. It means you have access to funds, right? You have access to the dollars to do what you want. And cashed up creatives have autonomy. They have financial autonomy and they have artistic autonomy. And we need a generation of wealthy artists, cashed up artists, so that our collective artistic autonomy can start to change the landscape of how things run in this world, okay? Let me pull back now from that meta setup here. So when we're talking about getting cashed up as a creative, the first step is getting 3 months ahead on bills. This is the first milestone in getting cashed up. Now I'm going to explain 6 reasons in the energy of the 6-part series that we're launching today. I'm going to give you 6 reasons why being cashed up as a creative is going to change your life. And that is why this is the first and most important milestone. Now, this is the most important first step because it's going to have the biggest impact on your life. Now, this is before debt payoff. This is before other savings goals. This is before maxing out a retirement account. 3 months ahead on bills. Because when we think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right, our most base needs as human beings is food, shelter, water. Food, shelter, water. And money equals, for us now in this day and age, food, shelter, water. And so when we don't have that most basic foundational building block, or we are constantly in terror that that basic foundational building block is going to be taken from us, we can't think bigger. We don't have space to think creatively. You don't have the ability to do anything else when that foundational building block is constantly in flux, right? Or like in fear of, fuck, what if I don't have it? Getting 3 months ahead on bills solves for that, right? It solves for that basic human need of food, shelter, and water. You're not going to lose your apartment. You're going to be able to feed yourself. You're going to be able to take your shower, right? That is the first step. For so many creatives, there's a pattern of living month to month or being like just a hair ahead of what you need, but it constantly feels like there's something at your heels, right? Or I think of, during the Olympics when you're watching the swim races, when people are like neck and neck and it's like a fingertip. And when you're watching it, you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Like that energy is the same energy when you're only just like a little bit ahead on bills, or you're being able to pay your bills at the exact due date, right? When you're not ahead, versus the races that you see where like Michael Phelps or Katie Ledecky, right? Where they are like a whole freaking lap in front of everyone else. And you're like, oh my gosh, she's got this in the bag. Look at them go. That ease that you feel when you're watching that much space, that's what 3 months ahead on bills is going to give you. You now have space to think and hit your other financial goals. You're not going moment to moment, and you have breathing room. Now, I want to clarify that being 3 months ahead on bills is different than an emergency fund, because what tends to happen is when you have an emergency fund and it's labeled that way, for my serial savers, you end up hoarding money there. And there's this thought that you're not allowed to touch it. It's for other things. And there's always an emergency or emergency down the pipeline. So even if you have plenty of money in the bank account, you're still functioning in those tight margins because you've told yourself, I'm not allowed to touch that. There's not actually accessible funds for your nervous system to know, like, you can use that if you need it, right? You have 2 months of bills in a separate fund that you can use if you need it. And I say this because I have had experience with this. I saved $23,000 in a savings account right out of college. I was pinching pennies. I was a budgeting girly doing my spreadsheets. I had $23,000 in savings and I still felt so broke. I was having weekly panic attacks about money. I felt so anxious all the time. I felt like a starving artist. And it was because I put that money into a savings account and I said, Brooke, you're not allowed to touch it. That's for the future. That's for emergencies, like not you just paying rent and surviving, Brooke. That's not an emergency. Like, it became a thing that wasn't mine anymore. And so it just continued to fuel this like month to month cycle. Like I wasn't feeling like I was getting ahead. And so what's different about getting 3 months ahead on bills is literally how it's structured in your bank accounts. You're going to have a bank account called your on deck fund, where you're going to have 2 months of bills in that fund. And then at the top of the month, you have 1 month of bills in your spending accounts. I teach this process inside of the money flow method inside of my new group program, Cashed Up Creatives, which will be opening right after the free training that you should register for if you haven't yet. The link is in the show notes. This is a structure I teach inside of the money flow method. And so what this is doing is you have a month set up before you, right? You have money for a whole month set up in your bank accounts, and you have 2 months of bills inside of a separate account called your on deck fund. That is so much different than stacking money away as much as possible in an emergency fund, especially for creatives, for those of us with fluctuating income. We need access to 3 months of bills to feel safe. And creativity thrives on financial stability, thrives on financial safety. And so when you can give yourself that tangible safety that is as close as your arms reach, your creativity is going to soar. All right, now I'm going to give you 6 ways that this is going to change your life, getting 3 months ahead on bills. So first one, you take the pressure off of your art. When you are 3 months ahead on bills, you don't have the pressure on your art of like, pay my rent, bitch, right? You don't have that. You can go into an audition room with ease. You can apply for a job with ease, right? You have that breathing room off of your art. And I'm going to give you some very specific examples. So when I really started to feel and give myself breathing room being ahead on bills, my artistic work soared. And not just like how I felt about my work, but the tangible results I was receiving. I'm an actor and I never walk into an audition room or am doing a self-tape stressed about money. I'm not thinking about what this job is going to equal financially, right? Sometimes I don't even know the full pay rate or what like LORT tier we're at when I'm going into the audition. I am so focused on the art. Now, what this does is it allows me to be super present in the experience of a live audition room, not just in the actual room, but in the whole holding hallway, right? I am able to be present with the other actors sitting around me. We're sparking conversations. I'm learning from them. We're having good conversations about money. We're also talking about agents. We're talking about what classes to take. Like the presence that I'm able to have because of that ease, that I'm not stressed about getting the audition right. I'm not stressed about like, I gotta prep my audition and I gotta make sure it's perfect and I can't get distracted because I need this money or I need to book this thing. I've removed all of that pressure. And then when I go into the audition room, I'm so focused on the work and I'm just having a good time acting, and I'm able to be present with the people behind the table. When they ask me how I am, I'm actually able to answer that question rather than just thinking about my audition and being like, yep, I'm good, how are you, right? I'm actually able to have a conversation. And there was a few recent auditions at EPAs, and there's a whole thought in the space right now that you don't book from EPAs. In the past month, I've gotten 3 callbacks from open call EPAs, right? I go in, I do the sides, I'm having fun with the work. And there was one where they gave me a call back in the room. I came back the next day, did the same thing. And they were like, wow, we want to give you a note, but we can't. Like that was exactly what the work was supposed to be. And it was because I wasn't focused on getting it right. I was focused on bringing Brooke to that specific piece, and it paid off. I did one of the best auditions I'd ever done because I wasn't even thinking or worried about financially what that audition would result in for me. Now, as actors, you've probably heard this advice and these sentiments before, but what I'm saying is that when you're cashed up, when you're not worried about money, when you're 3 months ahead on bills, you don't actually have to try to make that happen. It automatically happens because you're automatically not stressed about money. So you're automatically walking into the audition room with ease. Thought work and like thinking your way around how to be present as an actor, thinking your way out of your financial anxiety. Yes, we love thought work. We love mindset work. But when you've got the dollars in the bank, you don't have to do as much mindset work, right? Like the facts are the facts. You're 3 months ahead on bills and you can walk into an audition room totally at ease, focused on the art. Number 2, you can take time off if you want it or if you need it. You'll hear an interview with one of my clients, Catherine, next week, and she's talking about her 18-month sabbatical. Now, Catherine was a full year ahead on her bills and chose to take time off to heal her burnout and to make a totally new career pivot. She had no idea what she wanted to pivot into. And now she's living in London and has a totally new job and has so many more boundaries around her work life. And she was able to do that because she was ahead on bills. And one of the things we talk about in this episode is she had this chunk of money that she got in her redundancy package when she left her past job. And one of the things that we continued to do whenever she was feeling financial anxiety over the course of 18 months, right? 18 months, no income can really do a number on your nervous system. And every single time that financial anxiety was creeping up, we would look at that money and we would spread it out and we would see how many months of bills she still had in the bank. And we would create different scenarios of like, it could be 6 months of bills if you were living your super cushy lifestyle, but it could also be 12 months of bills if you're playing in X Games mode. And so what happened when we were able to look at that, it immediately quelled the financial anxiety because being ahead on bills hits the base foundational Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food, shelter, water. When you know you have food, shelter, water, no matter what, okay, now I can breathe. And then you're actually able to figure out what the real anxiety is coming from, which for her, it was the unknown, it was the whole life transition, there was a lot of other stuff going on. But she was able to take that time off to figure all of that stuff out. I think I've told this story before, but there was a time for me where I was in a really taxing show as a non-union actor, and it took a lot for me emotionally, and also I had done like 9 months back to back of acting gigs, which was so wonderful, but it took a lot out of me. And so what I needed to do was I needed to go sublet an apartment that had a pool and just vibe and heal for a couple of months, because there was like, I had my first ever panic attack on stage. It's the first and only time I ever had a panic attack on stage. And I was like, yes, this is a clue that something is not right. And we need to take some time to like be be okay, right? Feel better. And so I was able to give myself that. I was able to sublet an apartment for 3 months, get a discount because I paid for it up front because I had the cash in the bank, so I could just, I had a place to live for 3 months that was already paid for, and I was good to go. And now, like, my creativity I didn't have a wound that scarred because I just jumped right into the next thing, or I like jumped right into like finding the next job or needing the money. I was able to give myself space, okay? Number 3, you are safe to take the leap into full-time freelancing or full-time artistry, or make a leap into any other kind of season of life or transition that you desire. And why is that? Because when you're 3 months ahead on bills, you know that no matter what, even if you leap and fail, you have a safety net. That's your parachute, right? You're not leaping into the canyon just like hoping there's a trampoline at the bottom. You're leaping into the canyon knowing you have a freaking parachute, that you are literally not going to die from leaping, where when you don't do that, you're either not going to leap, or there's a strong, I don't like this analogy anymore, you're not going to die, okay? But having that safety makes it a lot easier to jump. I had a client, Lauren, who she had a survival job. She was working at a retail store, and she loved this job, but there was a massive layoff across all of the chains across the country. And she was one of the people that got laid off. And we had been working together for a while, and she was 3 months ahead on bills. She had rent separately in an account, in an on-deck account, that she could look at and be like, you know what? I think I'm okay. And I think this layoff is a sign for me to be a full-time singer. She's in a really cool choral group. She's an amazing artist, amazing singer. And she just decided that now she was going to be a full-time freelancer because she knew her numbers, she had her systems in place, and she was ahead on bills. So even if it didn't work out, she knew she was still safe, and she had bought herself time. All right, number 4, your income can fluctuate without throwing your nervous system into fight or flight. So when you have fluctuating income, no matter how much money you're making, even if you're at the $1 million level, the multi-million-dollar level, that doesn't stop being a little wild to watch and experience when your income fluctuates, especially when it dips, right? Like, it's really fun when it goes way up, but then when it goes lower, it can feel really stressful. But when you are 3 months ahead on bills, that won't throw you into fuck, fight or flight energy, because you have 3 months of bills to buffer you, right? So if this month is a little low, that's totally fine. I've got a whole month of bills that I can buffer with. Oh, we're a little low that second month. Great. Now my wheels are starting to turn in my brain of like, is something going on where I need to like fix my sales, or do I need to ask for, figure out a different kind of survival job? Is this becoming a pattern? Like, what income is coming in? Your wheels will start turning in your brain if you now have 2 months where you've had lower months, okay? That you're not planning for, right? Like when you're getting into, if you own a business and you're in a launch model and you're expecting those lower months, that's a different story. But even so, during those lower months, you're going to want to be 3 months ahead on bills to be able to buffer you. So then you still have a whole other month to start implementing different things to make sure more money's coming in, but you're still going to be okay. So do you see how 3 months gives you the ability for your income to fluctuate, for you to see if it's a pattern or if it was just a fluke month, or if this was just an expected dip? And then you still have time to kind of like turn the cart around or pivot or make some different decisions to make sure that cash is coming in at the rate that you want it to. You've given yourself space so that you are not riding the wild dips emotionally alongside your income, right? That is not a sustainable way to live, right? Like, your poor heart is going to give out if that's the way you're living. So give yourself that consistency of how you're able to live your lifestyle, even if your income is fluctuating. I had a couple that was a client for a while. Their names were Rin and Josh. They're wonderful artists, wonderful actors, and they they were full-time artists, right? They're full-time actors, and they were going from like gig to gig, but they would have time in between their gigs. And so one of the things that we worked on was, when you have like that big gig around the holidays, how are we taking that money and putting it towards getting ahead on bills? So when you have those times where you're not booking gigs, or you don't know if you're going to book a gig, you know you're going to be okay. So you're not stressed of like, oh no, when's that next big gig going to come around? Or like, am I going to have to wait until next holiday season to get that big check again? They were able to support themselves and feel breathing room. They also just had a baby, which is so wonderful. I love seeing the videos of their baby that they post on Instagram. They just had a baby, and they were able to enter into that new season of life, having run the numbers and knowing what their new monthly bills were going to look like, and feeling safe doing so. Number 5, you're able to spend money guilt-free because you know it won't affect your ability to pay rent. Okay, you're able to spend guilt-free knowing that your bills are already taken care of. This is something else I teach in the money flow method, where you've already decided what your bills are going to be. And when I say bills, I'm talking about your like rent and utilities, but also like your groceries, you're eating out, going out to coffee, going to shows, like that stuff is included in bills. That's what it costs to live as you month to month. And so what you're able to do is, when you know that you're 3 months ahead on bills, and when you are actively using the money flow method and your money is automatically being split up into different categories, right? Your savings are being taken care of, your debt payoffs being taken care of, you're funneling money into your bills for the next month. The rest of it is literally earmarked for you to spend how you wish, to spend how you want. So you literally are giving yourself a chunk of money that you can go play with. I call it playground money. So you can spend it without thinking like, oh, but am I going to have enough for rent? Or even, am I going to hit my savings goal? Or like, am I going to be able to pay off my debt? Should I be using this for something else? Those questions aren't there because of how the system is set up. You're giving yourself money to spend guilt-free. I had a client, Shelly, who she is a freelance web designer, and implementing the system and getting her ahead on bills in both her business finances and her personal finances. She was always thinking to herself before we started working together, like, can I afford this? I really want this purse. Can I afford this? I really want this piece of clothing. Can I afford it? Right? And that question was removed from her brain when we implemented this system. Her money was automatically split up between all of the things she needed and wanted. And then she was left with this money where she was like, wait, I need to celebrate myself. I want to go have fun with this money. And she went to Yves Saint Laurent and got herself her dream purse, her dream bag. And she was able to do that guilt-free and feel really good about that purchase because she knew it wasn't going to affect her ability to pay bills in her business or her personal finances. I also had a client, Shannon, who you'll hear from later this week. I'm going to drop my interview with her on the podcast in a few days. And because she had bills set aside, she had, I think it was 6 months of bills set aside and ready for her, available to her. She was able to take a cruise, like book a cruise 12 months in advance with her hubby. She was able to take herself on a solo vacation because she knew she had the cash available to her. She was able to, you'll hear her talk about it in her interview, the things she was able to buy for herself and buy for her family in her nesting phase when she had her baby, like all of that stuff she was able to do, knowing she had the safety net of, I can still pay my bills, right? You're able to spend guilt-free when you're ahead on bills. Number 6, you're able to move cities and apartments with ease. I have had so many clients move to high cost of living cities, but not have financial stress. I had a client, Jillian, who moved to New York City as an actor. And because she was ahead on bills, when she had a conversation with her dad where her dad was expressing his a little bit of stress and concern about what if you're not able to make this work? I'm worried for you, right? As dads are. And she was able to say, hey dad, here's my money strategy. Let me lay it out for you. And here's how many months I'm going to be able to survive. Even if I make no money, I'm going to be okay. Okay. I also had a client, Sherry, who she wanted to move to Trinidad, and she was having a lot of thoughts about like the actual move itself, but financially, she knew she could make the leap at any time. We mapped out how much ahead on bills she would be inside of her savings. Moving to Trinidad, even if she made no money for 6 months, she was going to be able to live and survive in that new season of life, in that new place, without stress. I had a client, Alexis, same thing. She moved to New York City as an actor. And because she was ahead on bills, she knew that the extra money that she had, she was able to furnish her apartment with like really nice West Elm furniture and enjoy her time in the city right as she moved here. Same with my client, Caitlin. I had her on the podcast a couple of months ago. And when she moved to New York, we had mapped out how many months of bills do you have in your savings. So you know, no matter what, you can make this stretch 3 months or 6 months. And so what that allowed her to do was she moved right before the holidays, and she was still able to enjoy the holidays without stressing about like, I need to get a job the second I get there so that I bring in money because, oh no, what am I gonna do? She was like, you know what? I'm gonna go out with some friends when I get there. We're gonna enjoy, we're gonna set up our apartment, and then when the new year hits, then we can really hit the ground running. She gave herself that space. I also had a client, Mark, who he moved to Chicago. And again, to pursue his artistic career. And he was able to make that move financially stress-free. Because what I want to say about moving apartments and moving cities, it is a large financial undertaking alongside it usually meaning a big transition in life, like in a season of your life. And so if you're going to like have mental energy being expended on handling something or thinking about something, let it be about the life stuff. Let's make the financial stuff a non-issue. Let's make sure all of your bills are going to be paid in that new city, in that new apartment for 3 months so that you can move and like, oh my God, the new life change. You can deal with that part without a part of your mental capacity being taken up by like, fuck, how am I going to pay this rent? So many reasons why getting 3 months ahead on bills is the first milestone to being a cashed up creative. This is one of the steps in my 4-step anti-budget money strategy. And in my new free training that's happening on June 1st, I'm walking you through each of the 4 steps so you can see the pathway to actually getting 3 months ahead on bills with fluctuating income as a creative. You don't have to budget. You don't have to have a bi-weekly paycheck. I also want to say though, if you do have a bi-weekly paycheck, this system works for you too. If you just don't want to budget, this system works for you too. But it was built for fluctuating income. So I will see you there on June 1st. If you want to register, the link is in the show notes, and make sure you are tuned in later this week when I have an incredible client who, her name is Shannon. Interview with her is going to be dropping later this week. If you are planning on having kids, or you have a kid, if you're a mama, if you have made big moves buying houses, she is an interview you are going to want to tune into. And make sure you stay tuned next Monday for part 2 of Lessons from a Cashed Up Creative. I will see you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in. Come join me on Instagram for more on how to build a simple, sexy relationship with your money. My Instagram handle is @NotStarvingArtists. And if you want to dive deeper with me, head to the show notes to learn more about one-on-one coaching. If you love this episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend that you want to get rich with.